Hi. As David said, I am writing a paper that tries to extend Morgan's. It's very much a work in progress, but I want to try and draw out a line of questioning that I think might be quite fruitful. So let's dive straight in. I buy the claim that welfare degradation can constitute an existential risk. The natural question is, are we doomed? Are we cooked? What can we do about it? To investigate that question, let's sketch the argument at play. So Morgan doesn't exactly make this argument, but I've heard several people run it after reading his paper. It's a schematized version of Joe's competition vibes argument, and it goes something like this. I want to grant the second premise and contest the first. Competitiveness depends on fitness, and fitness depends on the structure of the game that states are playing. By modeling the game that states are playing, I want to try and push back against the overarching soundness of this argument. First, a note on scope. The paper is restricted to relatively near-term interstate competition, but I think that the arguments can, in principle, generalize or be extended to cosmic scales. So the basic model is drawn from the canonical evolutionary game in Maynard Smith and Price, 1973. We suppose that there are two types of states. There are H types that cooperate and meet some welfare threshold, and there are low welfare competitors, L types, which provide less welfare and always defect. So as you can see here, the states are matched in every period, and their interactions are deterministic. Now, two solution concepts that we care about here are basins of attraction and evolutionary stability. I'm not going to do the math because I have 5 minutes, but it can be shown that when the payoff between H types is greater than the payoff in L type gets when matched with an H type, the population can converge to high welfare cooperators, which is evolutionarily stable. So what? I want to claim that this solution concept is slightly underappreciated in the AI literature. Aggregative pressures aren't stopping driving history. Instead, cooperation is modeled as endogenous to interstate competition. It can be blind or unintentional in ways that strong interstate coordination are not always supposed to be. And finally, it doesn't require that all parties agree to cooperate or to coordinate. Now, I hear you saying that model is extremely toy, and it is, but you can make more complex models. And in these more complex models, you can endogenize the trade-off between expenditure on automation and on welfare. And you can endogenize the role that automation plays in determining interstate competitive fitness. In these models, so you can get progressively more complex, in these models, a somewhat unsurprising feature emerges. Welfare can be sustained between these cooperators when cooperation exhibits increasing returns to scale. Now, there's a lot of open questions here. The work's not done yet, but they cluster into roughly two buckets. One is, how can we construct better models and test whether or not they accurately reflect the interstate competition game? The second bucket is, how do these abstract implications about high welfare collaborations or increasing returns to scale transfer into concrete near-term recommendations about what states can do when thinking strategically? All of this, to me, yields a couple of hopeful conjectures. The first is that cooperation can be competitive, depending on the structure of the game that's being played. Second, we can shape that game through near-term policy recommendations. The extent to which we can do this seems like a pretty important open question. It might run up against certain fundamental laws, but it definitely seems worth exploring. And finally, the combination of those claims suggests that this kind of modeling the evolutionary dynamic between states in a more precise way, can be policy relevant. They're imperfect abstractions, of course, but they might be able to suggest interventions that would combat welfare degradation. Thank you. Oh, bring it into the model.
Cool, thank you. And I think we have time for one question about puzzle concept.
So if I'm not wrong, I think evolutionary game theory typically requires like a large amount of natural agents. So like, I think it's possible that there are actually very few relevant actors in the case of AI. So do you think that would like invalidate things?
This is an interesting dialectic. So this argument is run on the basis of the argument that Morgan runs, which turns on these evolutionary arguments, which in turn demand large n. Once you have small n, things get a little more complicated. But I think one of the things that I want to try and prove out in the paper is that like these sorts of approaches, the kinds of policy interventions that I would like to recommend, are only good in small n and generalize to the kind of scary large n competitive pressures worlds. So if it's an internal critique, then I think it holds. And if it's an external critique, then I think it still holds.